I mean, basically, I just wanted to get you on because I wanted to get the, get your viewpoint of Star Wars because I know you had a not a necessarily the most positive view,
Sure.
which so like I guess like let's just kind of start from the beginning. I mean, everybody was super excited when this was announced that the third one was coming out soon. So like it was going to be the conclusion of this saga. So like what did you think about it in general? I already kind of know from from my speaking before, but just get into it.
Yeah. I mean, coming out of Last Jedi, I was blown away. I thought it was fantastic, one of the best Star Wars movies ever made. I thought Ryan Johnson brought a really cool vision to the Star Wars universe, and I was just really excited about all the opportunity that lay in um, what was to come in the Rise of Skywalker. So I thought there was a lot of groundwork there for something interesting. So I think as soon as I found out Palpatine was in it, I was immediately a little bit skeptical, just because I felt that was a little bit safe, a little bit too predictable. Um, but at least I went in optimistic, and I would say that I would say that the movie has some good qualities and some pretty bad qualities, but I left I think overall disappointed uh, in the movie. But I don't think it's one that's going to frustrate me more than it is anger me. I guess I left disappointed, but I think there is enough good stuff in it that I think maybe once my initial uh, disappointment wears off, I may come to like it more. But that's how I felt about it, at least on the first watch. I haven't watched it yet. A second
How
time though.
that's what I was going to ask. How many times you watched it? Just once?
Yeah, just the one time, which is kind of unusual. I did go make a point to see Force Awakens a couple times. I saw it 3 times, and then I saw Last Jedi 3 times as well. And with this one, it's been there. To be fair, there's been a lot of good movies this holiday season. Little Women was great. Uncut Gems was amazing. So those have taken up my time a little bit more, but I've not felt the motivation, man. So that's
Hmm.
kind of disappointing to me too. That I don't feel the need to go back to the theater yet to see it.
So where would you rank them? Like the last three? Would you say Last Jedi would be one, and then Force Awakens, and then this one?
Yeah, that's where I put it. I think Force Awakens does a good job of introducing a lot of fun characters. Uh, I think J.J. Abrams in particular is really good at characters for one thing, and in casting, uh, and also setting up mystery box things. Like
Hmm.
I think uh, part of the Force Awakens appeal is that there are lots of setups for mystery. But I think even J.J. Abrams would have to say that he's not so good at wrapping up the mysteries or explaining the answers
Hmm.
to a lot of the questions that he sets up. And I think Ryan Johnson did a good job of getting rid of some unnecessary ones. And then
Hmm.
it felt really regressive to go back to uh, things that felt like didn't need an answer or to be further elaborated on in Rise of Skywalker.
So do you think it's kind of like strange? So for me, and I don't know how the other Star Wars were, but I thought they were all directed by like the same individual, like the sagas. Were they like three at a time? Were they directed by the same person?
Well, the first original 3 Star Wars were directed by 3 different people, actually.
Okay.
George Lucas, of course, did the first one, and he took on writing duties the second one, which was directed by Erwin Kershner, and the third one was directed by a guy named Richard Marquand, who has quite literally done not much else after that. Same with Erwin Kershner. They have both kind of made Star Wars films, and then that was the peak of their career. But
Hmm.
the prequels were all George Lucas, of course.
Okay.
But yeah, this was an instance where there would have been 3, but I guess they fired the director from Rise of Skywalker and brought J.J. Abrams back.
Okay. So I guess like my thinking was, well, maybe there just wasn't jiving having like J.J. Abrams, then Ron, then J.J. again. But
Hmm.
but but if the first original three were done by different ones and it worked out, maybe that's not like a good enough reason. Because the reason I say that is because it seems like, and while I really liked Star Wars, I don't have like a high bar,
Mm-hmm.
so it wouldn't take much for me to like it. Just some lightsaber battles and I'll be good,
Right. Sure.
Um, but looking deeper into it, it does seem like he took a good amount of time rewriting everything from the Last Jedi. So, like for example, like in the Last Jedi, they basically wrote in like, screw this mask, broke it apart. In
Mm-hmm.
the Rise of Skywalker, he fuses it back together. Like everything, like it seems like almost everything that was done in the Last Jedi was like reversed, like the
Yeah.
lightsaber. So I don't know how that would. I don't know if that was something between them that was maybe irritating JJ. I don't know. I don't know why you would go back and it would appear to be a screw you or like an intentional
Sure.
rewriting of those those things.
I agree. That's definitely one way to interpret it. I think that, just the way that the PR stance that they kind of have to have on things, I think they would never admit like, well, I disagreed with the thing you did. And the helmet thing in particular was funny because so I think he was asked that question in an interview, like, "Hey, why is he, rebuilding the helmet after the last movie?" And he said, "Oh, that's going to be explained." And we got zero explanation as to what that
Right.
actually was, which has led to even further speculation about this ridiculous J.J. Abrams cut that they keep teasing.
Right. I heard about that. Yeah.
Yeah,
So well,
it's
and he fuses the helmet, but then rarely wears it in the movie. So
yeah,
it was almost like specifically just to get the helmet back, and then it's like we don't need
right,
it anymore. So they don't waste much time showing Palpatine. I mean, like we knew he was going to be in it, but it didn't take
hmm
long. Like from the first couple of scenes, he's there. What did you think about how they presented him? Did it make sense on how he's came back? Like having to do with him as a character.
yeah. Did you ever hear about how they? So you remember in the opening crawl, there's a reference to a signal that's going out across the galaxy,
Hmm.
saying that Palpatine is back, and
Hmm.
that signal is never heard in the movie, but it's actually was heard in the Fortnite game. Uh,
Okay, yeah, I
yeah,
didn't know about that.
yeah, it was really strange, but like you could actually hear it if you were in the Fortnite hangout, whatever, like on a certain
Interesting.
time. Really strange, but
Yeah.
I thought overall, I I think it's hard to just dislike Ian McDiarmid as Palpatine. I think
Hmm.
he's so good at being evil. The Emperor is such a classic character. I think a lot of the production design around the Sith planet, I think that's just a fascinating concept on its own. It feels
Hmm.
very old school, very like if you ever read any of the extended universe
Hmm.
novels, like it felt like something from those. I think all of that was really cool. I think it's just a matter of uh, feeling a little bit cheated in that this is something you've seen before, and I don't need a long. He's back, so to speak, but I think it may have benefited a little bit more from explaining um, the sort of dark magic around that. I think because I think that was something that wasn't explored enough, and maybe could have been.
Hmm. So what's interesting, we discussed this kind of off camera last week, was about because we're pretty sure we saw him like get blown up in the original, like the last one. So and we were talking about how there's a theory out that there were clones, and or he was a clone. And I was thinking, and I heard this somewhere else. If you're gonna clone yourself, like what happened? Why are you like have half fingers
Hmm.
and like
Right,
why is your clone not put together? Like
right.
what did you hear about it? Anything interesting?
Um, I think I don't even know if I read this anywhere. This may have just been my own like sort of conclusion that I arrived at. maybe through just, various videos that I watched or something like
Hmm.
that. But the
Sure.
fact that Palpatine could be this sort of eternal dark force in the universe that can't be truly defeated, and that like the heart of it was always on Exegol, and he never really left, but he always made clones of himself, and maybe Snoke was a like a malformed clone of Palpatine or some sort of
Like a botched
yeah,
clone. Yeah.
some sort of embodiment of the Sith magic that came to its own. They really don't explain it, and it's hard to judge it based on that alone. But it feels like a little bit of a cop out to me. So
Right.
I
Right. It's almost like, like why not have like a it was almost like why not have Kylo Ren be the Sith Lord, at this point in the movies, because I mean that you would really need like another boss, and the boss that already has been destroyed before, and we thought that was like a finished thing. And
Mhm.
then the other aspect of it is, are we now like negating the sacrifice of Anakin Skywalker? Because I
Right.
mean, because the whole thing was, so okay, so let's like shoot forward when she's laying there and she's like, oh, be with me, or whatever phrase she used, and she's talking
Mhm.
to the other Jedi, and then they start speaking back finally, and one of those is Hayden Christensen, from
Mhm.
my understanding,
Yeah.
because I saw him in the credits, and he's like, I brought balance to the Force. Well, I mean, technically, yes, he did, because he destroyed Palpatine, but now that Palpatine's back, did he really bring balance to
Right.
the Force? Why, like, his whole sacrifice and everything that he did was basically, negated by
Mhm.
having Palpatine come back. So
Right.
um, I don't know. I don't know. It kind of seems strange,
Yeah.
So to bring, and then so what do you think about linking her to Palpatine as a granddaughter?
That was definitely my biggest gripe with the movie. I thought that was it's easily its biggest weak point in terms of storytelling. Um, I thought it was a really big misstep, and I think it was just um, yeah, yeah. There may be some sort of tendency for people to think that JJ was mad at Ryan Johnson, but I think he just kind of panicked,
Hmm.
and he wasn't really sure because like this is what he had outlined, and I think that there just wasn't enough time to really let that sink in and let
Hmm.
it make sense. Like I think if anything, the new Star Wars trilogy is probably an example of um, why it's important to take time to make something that's creative and make something
Hmm.
that resonates. Because I
Right.
think there was such a deadline for this because it's this is like a multi-billion-dollar corporation, a
Sure. Sure.
multi-billion-dollar product. So I think there was such a rush to get the product out on time for the it has this very arbitrary 2-year release window.
Hmm.
But I think maybe a couple more passes at the script, you know, I really thought that would have helped, and I think that it was really hurt by this uh, very obvious instinct to play it safe
Hmm.
from a storytelling perspective. I thought really if you take Ray being a Palpatine out of the film, it doesn't affect the story very much.
Hmm.
Um, I like the overall message of you can be more than your ancestors if like if you come from you know an evil background that doesn't mean you're evil, that kind of thing. I like that message, but at the same time it doesn't really affect the rest of the movie at all.
Sure. So would you have kept her as what Ryan Johnson did, which basically she's from nothing? Like
Yeah,
would that be the way you would go with it? See, like that's interesting because there is something to be said about, and I'm playing. I did like the movie a lot, like I said, but I'm playing a devil's advocate too.
sure.
Um, Something to be said about anyone can I believe I heard someone say anyone can wear the mask, like
Mhm.
anybody can be a hero, and essentially linking her to another major name is like nepotism. Like
Right.
all these people are somehow like what does
Yes.
this story teach you? Well, it teaches you that you better be born in the right family,
Exactly.
otherwise you got no shot. So
Absolutely. And I think that's the biggest reason that I think overall this will be considered a failure as a film, I think, is that it didn't go bold enough with its choices, or a lot of the choices that it did make, I thought were really, they're very reticent in actually mattering. The consequences of those actions are very uh, casually thrown away. Like the whole fake out of Chewie dying, like that was very quickly an instance where you knew there was not actually any consequences. So there's no moment for you to reflect and say, "Wow, this is how the story could have be affected by the Rey being
right,
evil, possibly, or really killing her friend." Like you never really meant to linger on those things that make you feel uncomfortable, which
right.
I think is what something, at least I think The Last Jedi did powerfully, was that there were consequences and you really felt the weight of those, especially at the end of the movie when a lot of the resistance is gone. Um, uh, Admiral Holdo has basically sacrificed her life and one of the last ships. Uh,
Hmm.
the lightsaber's broken. Snoke is dead. Like a lot of things have really should have really long lasting impact on the story going into this one, but they really end up not mattering too much.
Yeah, well, it's interesting that you said that because there's like a pseudo sacrifice. It's like there's Chewbacca dies, we're sad, but now he's back. So
Right.
it's not. So it's like there's no cost. There's no real cost associated with this war that's essentially happening. Like
Yeah.
it's almost like a war with no casualties, which is very unrealistic. And I mean, I know we're talking about a science fiction movie, but
Hmm.
but in order for it to connect with people that are real, you have to have some type of like reality in this sci-fi movie, and it's like the reality comes in normally. You can't come in anywhere else because none of these things are real, so it has to come in with like the emotional aspect of it because that's across the board. So yeah, I mean, I feel like that kind of did irritate me a little bit because I felt like if someone dies, I mean, I understand like having a twist, but I mean, there should be some kind of sacrifice there, and it shouldn't be in characters that don't matter because
Right.
if characters that don't matter die, we don't care, you know.
Hmm.
So
Exactly. That's why I don't like Rogue One very much.
so as far as series are concerned, would you consider this the worst series, or like would you go? Well, I'll let you talk about it. Like what would you place like the originals, the prequels, and
Hmm.
this?
Wow, that's kind of tough. I would probably, easily say the original trilogy is my favorite, by a good margin. And I think I love Last Jedi enough, and I like Force Awakens enough that I would put this second. Um,
Hmm.
the prequels would be third, but I think I was really shocked when I went back to the prequels this time around. I did watch
Mhm.
every Star Wars movie before I saw this one just to get ready because I figured the last one for at least a while, and I was really surprised at how much I did still like. Well, I did like the prequels. I've gone through every variation of opinion on them from when I was a
Mhm.
kid. I loved them. When I was like in high school and really started getting into film and cinema, I really started hating them. But I think as I've gotten older, like I've really come to appreciate certain aspects about them that I think are fascinating. I
Mhm.
think they're really flawed, obviously, especially from
Mhm.
an acting and a script
Oh yeah,
perspective.
for sure, the
Yeah.
acting. Yeah, of course,
Yeah.
absolutely.
But I think there's some really fascinating politics going on in them and some really interesting messaging. I think that it's really strange that The Last Jedi was so good it made me like the prequels more.
Mhm.
And what I mean by that is that it sort of helped to recontextualize the prequels in just a few lines. Luke says,
Mhm.
the Jedi were vain and they allowed Darth Sidious to rise to at the height of their power. They allowed him to rise and become the Emperor. Like that helped me shift my thinking of, oh, that was all intentional that George Lucas was
Right.
doing. There was this sort of tale about the Jedi's hubris, the fact that they were supposed to be peacekeepers, or they ended up being like generals in these armies. Like you see
Hmm.
this weird hypocrisy in the Jedi
Right.
Order that, if you go back to it and you don't think of the Jedi as being the infallible heroes, like you start seeing things in black and white when you're a kid, like good guys, bad guys, but then I think George Lucas really smartly did a lot of more gray areas. Like even Count Dooku, like he's got a point in the prequels. Like even though he's very much wasted, I think
Hmm.
overall in those movies, I think there's at least nuggets of something interesting, especially politically. I think out throughout those movies. Um,
Sure. And I feel like you like I enjoy continuity. Like I love to see if I see something and I watch another movie that shows me how those people got there, like that to me gives, even if the movies aren't the greatest, it gives me something that I want. Like
yeah,
I want to know how Darth Vader became Darth Vader, and I want to see the progression of the steps, from being, you know, a good person and someone that's caring to someone who really, has changed, in even in, internally to the point where he's, killing children. So, it was good to see that continuity. So what did you think about as far as like other aspects of it? So I think, man, was it Driver is his name? The one that
Adam
played
Driver. Yeah,
Adam Driver. I thought he was phenomenal. Like in all the movies. Like I thought he did a really, great job. So, and what did you think about him?
yeah. I thought Adam Driver is easily the MVP of this whole trilogy. He's
Mm.
been fantastic, literally since like the moment he appears on screen. I think he's been just amazing. But
Mhm.
I think maybe if he had an opportunity or was not contracted for this one, he may have said, "Huh, I don't know about this one,"
Yeah,
because
yeah,
I think he's a great actor, and I think he had so much to do in The Last Jedi dramatically as an actor. Like he had so much like meat on the bone, so to speak. He had
right.
so much to actually give to that performance, and I think Ryan Johnson understood how talented of an actor he is. That I felt like, yeah, this was definitely a wasted opportunity to um, make him the great villain that he was in Last Jedi,
Mm.
or he
Yeah,
was leading up to be. It felt like.
yeah. I mean, they definitely pulled him back, from acting wise, from, the Last Jedi to this, because he, like you said, he was like, there was a lot more emotion. There was a
Hmm.
lot more, like, just like you said, meat on the bones. I don't know how else to describe it. Just more. He was giving a lot more. In this one, it was more, is much more standard.
Hmm.
Like, and while he's great, and I mean, he then wasn't he like a Marine before this or something like that? So he fought,
Yeah.
he did some tours, fought in real wars, not just Star Wars.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, I think he did good. And then we go back, like, off of that point, we go back to another point where we have no real loss. Even though he dies at the end, she with the lightsaber battle, she kills him and then brings him back to life again. Same thing
Right.
with Chewbacca. It's like he's dead, now he's back, and it's like it kind of
Yeah.
doesn't give you a chance to mourn. Doesn't really, you don't really develop you don't have enough time to, be disheartened or anything like that about it. So, what did you think about the battle itself, the Death Star, and that whole scene of the movie, like where they meet the kids? Like, did you hear anything interesting about that part?
Which part with the kids? Oh,
So,
like in on the where they're on the planet, the where
yeah, yeah,
it's like
and
falling down.
there's supposed to be some kind of soldiers that like
Right.
that escape. They all put their, guns down, like
Like
Finn's.
Finn did. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I thought from just from a visual standpoint, like the most of this movie visually was really impressive. I think
Mhm.
if I'm not mistaken, it's Dan Mendel who's photographed both of these movies for JJ. Uh, Visually, I just got really excited with like I think they did a good job like with the Death
Hmm.
Star being underwater. Like that's just such a cool
Hmm.
image, and I think the whole fight on those ruins I thought was really visually impressive. It I don't remember much about the stakes except well I liked at the very end where of course it's very dramatic that she stabs Kylo Ren and kind of leaves him for dead almost. But I thought that was definitely one of the stronger scenes in the movie for sure.
Hmm.
Um, I really loved
Before,
it from a visual perspective.
yeah, visually it was amazing. Before we get to the part where Kylo comes back and everything. So what's with the, and I must have missed it, but I've listened to other podcasts with regard to Star Wars, and they don't mention it either. Where she see right before she starts fighting with Kylo Ren, she sees. I'm assuming is that herself
Mm,
in like a Sith form or something like that with a double bladed.
right.
Um, so what is that? Have you heard anything about it?
I haven't heard any explanation for it, whether it's from the filmmakers or fans, but if I had to guess, I would say that's probably like something to do with um, like an Empire Strikes Back when Luke is in Dagobah and encounters Darth Vader in the cave, and it's way more of like a vision of something
Hmm.
like that ominous that could come to pass. Uh, that's what I got from it. I don't know if maybe so we're in the Emperor's throne room, right?
Right.
So maybe that's a secret Sith. Like I'm really reaching because yeah, they don't tell you at all.
So that is
Um,
such a weird thing because
hmm
it's so it's a major thing.
hmm
She's there, and then all of a sudden she in a Sith form with a different lightsaber
hmm
comes at her. Then they do like a real quick you know strike back and forth, and then she's fighting Kylo Ren. So it's like there's no
hmm
explanation, nothing at all. But you were saying you
Yeah.
were reaching. What were you thinking?
Like it could be like a Sith like power source if the Emperor's throne room's nearby. So like maybe there's some sort of dark like okay maybe a room that has the Emperor in it obviously is probably going to be very strong with the dark side of the Force.
Hmm.
So maybe there's some sort of like maybe it's like some musty like bacteria that just is still stuck on the Death Star and is filled with dark energy. That is my best theory on it, but
What was
that is
Lucas?
definitely not definitive.
What was Lucas's thing about the what's it called
Yeah,
the
these are some bad midi chlorians in here. So
Metachlorians? That's it. I was about to say Mandalorians. No, totally different.
Mandalorians, yeah.
Uh, yeah. So then they go through that. I also was reading some things about the kids that are involved there, or I guess they're not really kids, but
Right.
they were supposed to be like force sensitive, and
Mm,
from what I understand is there's going to be like a Disney Plus situation where with them, kind of having their story as well. So that should be interesting. So what did you think about like so as she kills him? You have Princess Leia. Um, you know, can you what was your take on that situation? That whole going into the forest type of
mhm.
move.
Uh, I think first of all, Carrie Fisher should not have been in this movie. As much as I dearly love
Well,
the
she's not going to
character
be
of,
in any other ones. I
right,
guarantee you that.
yeah, I dearly love Carrie Fisher. I loved her performance in Last Jedi and Force Awakens. I thought she was, fantastic and so good to have her back. At the same time, the way that this was instituted was very clumsy. Uh, it felt very robotic and detached, and it was just hard to get over the fact that you knew that she wasn't there and that these were all camera tricks and CGI
Mhm.
tricks in order to mask the fact that she wasn't there. Um, I think overall her death was very tasteful in the movie, but at the same time, I think having zombie Carrie Fisher around only hurt the movie.
Zombie Carrie
Um,
Fisher.
yeah, I thought that only hurt the movie overall, and as much as I loved seeing Harrison Ford back in the movie, I could tell this was a scene that was meant to be for Carrie
Mm,
Fisher. That would just be such an impactful scene to have uh, those two together, to have
sure.
that sort of reconciliation.
Hmm.
I think that was totally a moment that was meant for Kylo Ren and his mother, or Ben Solo and his mother, I should say.
Yeah.
But really, I thought that was definitely one of the highlights of the movie, was seeing Harrison Ford back, and so that was definitely a touching moment, and one that even after leaving the theater feeling disappointed, that's
Hmm.
one point I could go back to and say, you know what, they did that pretty well, as much as
Yeah.
I as much as as well as I could have, just because Carrie Fisher's gone, so there's not much
Right.
we can do about it. So
Yeah, she went into the force. Yeah.
yeah,
Uh,
exactly.
so, so yeah. So I agree that that was a really good moment. My favorite part was and again, that's the continuity thing. But my favorite part is when he's like, "I know what I need to do, but I don't know if I have the strength to do it."
Right.
So, and it was the same thing that he said to him when he when he ended up killing him.
Mhm.
So yeah, I thought that was really cool. So so then we leave the plan. Oh, and that's the other thing. I was listening to another podcast, and they were saying how, and I completely agree. Uh, when the kids were like, "Oh well, we laid down our guns," they, it seems like it would have been naturally a perfect moment that just have one more line when Finn asks why, and they're like, "Oh, I don't know, we just did it." It was
Mhm.
like, it could have been something like, "We heard about you," and
Sure.
that would have really like brought things together because remember, Finn was like, I'm not in the rebellion. Initially, he was like, I'm not in the
Yeah.
rebellion, but he played like he was. Well, then he technically like would be what he truly kind of wanted to be, was inspire, and be in the rebellion and so forth.
Yeah.
So, but they didn't do that. So,
Yeah.
so then so then we go like to the Sith planet, and they're there. Like, what did you think about that part of the scene? Like, was that because I know you said you like some things about the movie. I know we talked about Harrison Ford. That might be the only part that you liked. I don't know, but what did you think about this last part?
I think this was also a really strong part of the movie, especially from a production design perspective. I think it's just such a cool design of a planet. The fact that these weird guys in the stands, like cheering, who you can't even see their faces. It's just a sort of
Hmm.
this mob of dark people in hoods or something like that.
Right,
And
right.
I thought it was just it was very well done and creepy looking. It's just hard not to uh, feel a little disappointed in. I think the way we got there. I think
Hmm.
overall the movie is very poorly paced, as far as the first half to me doesn't feel like Star Wars in the fact that it jumps so quickly from beat to beat.
Hmm.
Um, there's just one thing happening after another, like in a
Somebody
way
said
that
somebody says it looked a lot like Indiana Jones, or like where they were just like going from place
yeah,
to place.
yeah. It's really does not feel like Star Wars when someone is not in a set place for a while, and there's like some like actions and consequences happen in one place. Not chasing a MacGuffin, as they call it. Like they're not chasing
Hmm.
the specific object that's kind of like, we got to find
Right.
this, we got to find that, we got to find this person, we got to find this object. Like, I just feel like the pacing was really bad. But I think once the movie decides to slow down, like in the scenes with on the Death Star, the ruined Death Star, on the planet, on the Sith planet, I should say,
Right.
that's when it feels like Star Wars. And I think this was a very classic Star Wars finale. As much as I'm not super invested in the fact that it's the Emperor being back,
Hmm.
and the fact I think I literally feel like the wind was knocked out of me when she became a Palpatine, because I was like, really, they really just did that. They really went back on the Last
I'm
Jedi and just said,
surprised you didn't walk
yeah.
out.
I mean, at that point, I was like, oh man, like the theater, nobody in the theater's reacting either, which is weird. I was
Yeah.
there opening night, and it was just like no one reacted at all. No one was like, no one was like, oh my
Yeah.
gosh, or like, wow, this is so crazy. Oh
Yeah.
wow, it's like there was just like it was dead. I don't know.
Because usually when it's like a big moment like that,
Mhm.
everybody starts clapping. I remember even in the prequels when you
Mhm.
hear that breath of Darth
Yeah.
Vader, and as generally thought of those prequels being not as good, when they people heard that breath, finally the mask come down, everybody like went crazy in the theater. So
Yeah.
yeah, I mean that's something to compare it to. But
Yeah.
you were saying as far as the last scenes and everything with.
Yeah, I
Mhm.
thought from a design perspective, like the visuals are really cool. I thought I love Ray and Ben's dyad. Like, I think that was a really cool idea. It's obviously set up in Last Jedi. So like, okay, we like that. We'll keep that.
Mhm.
But I think that was a really cool idea. They did a lot of cool things with it. Um, yeah, and I also really liked the scene where all the Jedi, speak to her
Mhm.
and are with her, like you said, and I think that was definitely a strong part of the movie. Like, yeah, the ending is pretty strong overall, I would say,
Right.
especially this scene because I think it's really exciting. Um, some good acting in it, some really
Mhm.
great visuals. Um, love that we get to see Ben Solo and just someone said it's like he just stopped at the space gap and then got a sweater and then decided to
Yeah.
run to the planet. But I thought overall that was definitely one of the better scenes in the movie, and I thought at least a strong enough ending that kept me going a little bit longer. I think.
Right. And I mean, they had several of like, so they had, I think they had Osaka from the
Hmm.
animation.
Yeah,
Then they had Obi-Wan. They had, what's that? Quan, I can't remember
Qui-Gon
the name.
Jinn and Mace
Qui-Gon Jinn.
Windu and
Yeah.
Yoda.
Yeah. Like
Uh,
all the.
yeah.
So interesting. I do like how they set up her passing the lightsaber because throughout the movie he was like doing this thing where he could grab where she was, like whether her was
Hmm.
necklace and everything. So I
Hmm.
do like how they set up the precedence for her being able to pass the lightsaber, like behind her back or whatever it
Right.
was to him. And the only issue I had was I thought that the Knights of Ren would have played like a bigger role or like I don't know, like a more meaningful role because they were there for like a second. Then they were
Hmm.
like, "We're boys, but now we have to mess you up." Like I mean,
Right.
like it was just it was kind of like I don't know. I felt like they were kind of just thrown in there. I wanted them to have more something like cooler, in the
Yeah.
movie. Um, but yeah, and so let me see. So yeah, towards the end, I mean, everything. Did you like the very last part of the ending, like where he goes away as far as he goes, I guess, into the Force?
Yeah, there was a lot of like hubbub, I guess, around the kiss. Like
Mm-hmm.
I know there was a lot of like there was some backlash to it. Some people say it was awkward. It was I didn't like that, but I actually felt it was a nice little moment. I thought that was kind
Right.
of coming from the first time they meet. Honestly,
Right.
like I thought it was kind of set up the whole time. I thought
Sure.
it was a nice moment, and I think it probably would have been too hard to redeem Ben completely, I guess, throughout the whole movie. Like, I don't know if
He did kill a bunch of people, so I
yeah,
mean,
yeah, he was kind of a bad guy for
yeah.
most of this trilogy and killed some very important people. So
Right.
the fact that he wasn't redeemed was uh, made sense to me, even though it's like
Mm-hmm.
disappointing as to how much I like Adam Driver and how much I liked
Mm-hmm.
the relationship between Ray and Ben. But I thought it was good. I think that
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
him disappearing made sense, honestly.
Yeah. I mean, I don't. The kiss wasn't like they obviously had some kind of romantic tension throughout the movies,
Hmm.
and the kiss wasn't like an overbearing kiss. Like so,
Hmm.
it wasn't like it wasn't inappropriate. Like like for their relationship,
Hmm.
and so yeah. And the only thing is that so he goes into the force. Why like so like does he get to be so he was like at a point he was a Jedi or was he like he wasn't a full Jedi, so does he go into
Right.
the Force like everybody like all the other Jedi or like because they didn't show him at the end, like
Right.
So I don't know what, how do you interpret
That
that?
that really confused me about the movie. I thought for sure because he disappeared into the Force that he would show up at the end, like with Leia and Luke.
Hmm.
Just because I don't, if we really think about it, Anakin shows up at the end of Return of the Jedi,
Right.
and he
They
was just a
redid.
bad guy, and he got redeemed
Yeah.
at the very end, and then he would have showed up at the end, and it was like, it felt like that was too much of a perfect like rhyme to Return of the
Hmm.
Jedi to not do it. So I was kind of
Yeah. I mean,
confused.
you're already doing a whole lot of fan service.
Hmm.
What's another,
Yeah,
because I mean, yeah, I mean, you would think that that would be something like a good feel good moment to give to people, and yeah, he wasn't there, so it was like, okay, well, I hope he's okay, because I
yeah,
mean, because I
yeah.
don't see him, so like he
Right.
might be completely dead. Who
That
knows?
scene has led to a lot of rampant speculation that I've read online about the reshoots of that scene. Like,
Hmm.
there's like a lot of rumblings that Ben Solo was supposed to be there, but the scene was recut using old footage of Rey from a previous movie,
Hmm.
and like the fact that it was just like that she's looking supposed to be looking at someone and smiling, but it's supposed to be someone right next to her and not Luke and Leia, and it was like
I see.
that's led to even more people like convinced like that this is Ben was supposed to live, Raylo was supposed to be, the thing that
Hmm. Rayla.
yeah, that was gonna be canon, that was gonna
The-
be the end, the ship to end all ships, but
right.
uh it didn't happen. So
Hmm.
I you know
So basically, we're waiting for this like uncut, recut, whatever of JJ.
yeah,
Like, see what's happened.
I don't
You don't think it's coming?
as much as I think that could be improved with just a little bit better pacing in this movie. I think that ship has sailed. I don't think that we're getting a director's cut. We're going to get an extended cut of the movie. I think that's
Hmm.
not really the way of Star
When it comes
Wars.
out, yeah.
Yeah,
Because
I
they
just
did
don't
do
think
that
it's
with
going to happen.
Avengers. Because
Right.
Disney did do that with Avengers. They're like, hey, this is the Avengers, and I'm over there crying, bawling because
Right.
Iron Man died. Then they're like,
Yeah.
hey, by the way, do you want to cry again? Because
Yeah.
we got another one out in
Yeah.
theaters. So,
Yeah.
but yeah,
I think
but
that was meant to like, push it over the edge as like the biggest movie of all time or something like that. Like they wanted to get just enough
they
bodies
want to
and
beat,
seats.
yeah.
Yeah, so to beat Avatar. So which is a little bit cheating, I think, but it is, yeah, which also makes me even more convinced that we're not getting a new
Mhm.
cut is because if they were really worried about time, Avengers was over 3 hours long, and
Mhm.
I guarantee you, not a single Marvel fan protested or was like that was a little bit too long.
Oh,
I
absolutely
think
not.
exactly because Marvel fans, they like most of the Marvel movies, and like it's that was something that they would sit through, cause, especially because it's the last one.
Right.
This was the last of the Skywalker saga. This was the last Star Wars movie that they plan on making for a long time. The last one that had any of the original cast. I think they could have gotten away with a lot longer movie if they wanted to,
Oh yeah,
but they
for
just
sure.
didn't. So
Yeah.
I think that proves that there's not another cut coming, in my
Hmm.
opinion. I'd be happy
So
to
say what?
I'd
What
be
was the
happy to
last?
be wrong, but
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it doesn't seem like it. It's rare. It's rare to get like other cuts in theaters. That's not like what Avengers did is not common. So it's like, yeah. I don't think
it is
like
what, like six
you. I don't
minutes.
think.
It's not like a significant portion of
Right,
the movie that's cut out.
right.
That's what people are saying is that this would be like, probably an additional 30, 40 minutes of real story. So, I mean,
Yeah, that would make more sense.
mhm.
Yeah, so I guess all the way through this, what one point that before we reach like the very final scene, um, so what happened? And I believe is her name Rosa, like the
Rose.
Rose,
Mhm.
the girl that was introduced and heavily like implemented in the Last Jedi for Finn, and I mean, she almost had as little, you know, Babu Freak had
Yeah.
more than she did. So like, what do you think about that? Do you think they could have used her more, or you think she was, they did the right thing with her?
No, absolutely. I think they absolutely could have used Rose in a much higher capacity. I think Rose was a great character from The Last Jedi that showed a lot of promise, and especially like she's like the heart of the resistance, right? Like she's the reason that Finn becomes, like you were talking about earlier, like the reason that Finn becomes a hero of the resistance and is not just a friend of Rey is because of Rose and her commitment to the
Right.
cause, her, optimism, her determination, like all those things. And I think JJ just had no idea what to do with her and was like, I'm going to bring in Kerry Russell to be a bounty hunter just because I don't really know how to write this character.
Right.
Like, um, yeah,
It's
definitely.
it was tough because I felt like Finn needed somebody.
Hmm.
And while I liked that little trio of friendship that they had, that I felt like Finn needed a romantic interest, or at least one with like some romantic tension, because it was at a certain point it was obvious that Ray and Kylo had that connection. So,
Hmm.
and from what I heard down the pipeline was that what Finn wanted to tell Ray was that he was force sensitive. I mean, like, I don't
Yeah.
know if that was the case or not, but I mean, we wouldn't really know. But
Yeah.
but but it seemed like they squashed any kind of, because initially you thought that's what was happening. Like
Yeah.
in the Force Awakens, like I initially thought that the romantic interest was between Finn and Ray, but then
Hmm.
it kind of like went completely a different direction. So
Yeah.
yeah, I wish they would have used her a little more.
Hmm.
Um, so I guess we can finish it up with like the final scene. So she goes. What do you think about her like renaming herself as Skywalker?
Uh, I have to say I probably saw that coming based on the title. I really couldn't
Yeah,
think.
I
I
guess I
I
guess you're
couldn't
right.
think of another way to make that title make sense. I don't think it's a good title personally, but that was the only thing I thought could make sense. Is like, well, she's going to become a Skywalker, but she's not obviously going to be her. It's like she's not going to be her, Luke's nephew or sorry, niece, like Luke's niece or his granddaughter or his daughter, like because as soon as they would connect in the Force, he would know that he's her father.
Right, right.
So I was like, there's no way that they're actually family. So she's probably just going to renounce whatever name she has. Like,
Mhm.
I'm Ray Skywalker.
Yeah.
And lo and behold, that's what happened, which is not disappointing to me, but it was just like, that would seem telegraphed
Expected.
from the title.
Yeah. It's interesting because like I expected that, but then I thought, oh well, maybe this is like a twist, like because this is way too obvious. Like, so I thought maybe. So in my weird mind, I thought like maybe now we start the story of Palpatine the Jedi, like you know what I'm saying, instead of
Right,
Palpatine the Sith. Like so,
right,
like she keeps her name as Palpatine, and now she's the first Palpatine Jedi. Like so,
right.
but no, that's
No.
not what happened. So
Yeah.
and
I
yeah,
I love her lightsaber. I thought it was cool that it was made out of her staff.
right,
Um,
right. So I didn't catch that. I must have like been looking too hard at the lightsabers that she put in the
in the dirt.
sand.
Yeah.
So yeah, so she had a lightsaber, and I heard somebody else say that in another podcast that she had a staff lightsaber.
Well, I think what she did is that she made the gold or yellow lightsaber out of the pieces of her like staff that she had always had
I
forever. So
gotcha,
like I think like the
gotcha.
ends of it are the actual hilt
Right.
of the lightsaber.
That that'd be cool if she was like Darth Maul and had the double lightsaber.
Yeah,
Plus, it would go along with what the vision that she had of herself as a Sith. So
yeah, exactly.
yeah, so interesting. All right, well, overall, you give it a two thumbs down.
I'd say I have a scale and I'd probably put it at a 3 out of 5, which is like I had fun, but I got
Right,
problems. So
right,
I
right.
would put it probably at a B minus, high C plus.
Well, that's passing, right? I mean, I guess it
Yeah, for
passes.
sure. It passed.
All right.
I didn't despise the time I had with it, but I think overall in time, I'm probably gonna have to go through the 7 stages of grief with this and have to accept it eventually as being the last Star Wars. But for now, it's disappointing.
Yeah. What'd be awesome is so I went through the originals and the prequels with my wife when that was all that we had, like
Yeah,
back to back to back. It would be interesting now to go like through all of them, like, and just
yeah,
watch it all throughout succession. I wanted
yeah,
to do that with the Avengers, but I heard that, or not Avengers, but Marvel, but I heard that's like a 2-day endeavor straight
yeah.
if you like don't stop watching. So
Exactly.
hard to
Yeah.
find that time when you're working and trying to adult.
Exactly. Exactly. You got to
So
kind of pick and choose with when it comes to Marvel.
right.
They're all pretty good or fine, but
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. Eventually, I'll have to. I was worried that I did go actually after Rise of Skywalker. I was at home with my family during Christmas, and Last Jedi came on, and my dad was like, I'll just leave this on, and I was like, oh man, I wonder if this is gonna cheapen it in any way. The fact that I didn't
Hmm.
like Rise of Skywalker,
Right.
not at all. It's
Still
still one of my
great.
favorite movies. I'd say, and it even in contrast, it actually
Hmm.
makes it seem better. So
Right. Well, it sounds like you've got some like you know, legitimate points. So especially that you watched Last Jedi again and you still liked it. So it's like it wasn't
yeah.
like a matter of just emotion or
Hmm.
So yeah, I mean it is what it is. So all right, well, Ethan, thanks for coming on. I appreciate you speaking with me.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. I
All
appreciate
right,
it.
no problem. You take care. Bye bye.
You too.